Hey everybody, it's Guy here. It's Monday, December 8th, and I'm just about to go do my afternoon shift driving the school bus. Very cold day today. It was minus 23 degrees Celsius this morning. Anyway, I just wanted to file a quick report about something that I think some of you will find really interesting. It pertains to reality, touches on enlightenment, but really will interest you if you're interested in manifestation. Sorry about the weird lighting in the car here. Yeah, so I had a really interesting experience in the past few days. I listened to a report on manifestation by Cliff High. Cliff is one F and his last name High. And he has a Substack, and you can find his video reports in various places. I highly recommend you follow Cliff. He's a genius. He's one of the people I listen to regularly. I also listen to Richie from Boston, who is also excellent, very different. I have a few things I disagree with Richie, but he's really on the money about what the globalists are up to. Anyway, so what Cliff High mentioned in passing was he got into some territory that I've done a lot of work in over the years in the non-dual practice that I'm immersed in, called Advaita Vedanta, and I've been in that for 6 or 7 years, maybe longer. And what Cliff said was that there's a reason why physicists keep finding smaller and smaller particles. You know, they first they found, what was it, the atom, and then the nucleus of the atom, and then and then quarks, and they just keep finding smaller and smaller stuff. And what Cliff said was there's a reason that they don't understand as to why they keep finding smaller particles. And it's because they are materialist for the most part in their view of reality. They think that there's a physical world, and conscious awareness is an epiphenomenon of the physical world that exists in the first place. But what you learn through Advaita Vedanta and what you learn through the esoteric Eastern teachings, if you spend enough time in them, and it becomes self-evident, it's not something you prove, it's something that becomes self-evident to you, is that awareness, conscious awareness, is a priori. In other words, it's fundamental. All phenomena arises within awareness, and awareness is fundamental, and this becomes self-evident. And this is not how we experience the world. We experience the world as though there's a physical world, and we come into this world and we have awareness that grows and so on and so forth. But it's actually that's like a beginner understanding. Like an entry-level spiritual understanding would be that you have a soul inside your body. And an intermediate level spiritual understanding, and you hear people say this a lot, is I'm not a physical being having a spiritual experience, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. That's an intermediate level understanding. The advanced understanding is that there's nothing other than awareness. And awareness can only exist if it has something to be aware of. It needs to have an object of its awareness in order to exist. So this infinite eternal awareness, which has no size, shape, or dimension, dreams or imagines of an entire world. And the awareness is one and the same as the world that it imagines. And from this understanding, there is no separate self. There is no you. And that's why they say enlightenment is the ego's greatest disappointment. There's nothing in it for the ego. you see. The ego discovers that it's not real. It's the imagination of itself. And for the ego, this is really bad news, which is why people fight that realization. But when this is fully understood, it's the greatest news you could ever hear, because it means that what you really are, your true nature, is that you're everything. There's simply everything experiencing this, generating the experience that it's having. And that's the sense in which you are eternal. Again, the intermediary understanding would be that you reincarnate and your soul goes to heaven to be with God, or you're born again and again. There's all sorts of these different ideas, but those are intermediate level understandings. The advanced understanding is there's only this, and it's eternal, and you're the whole thing. And in a sense, there is no you. There's only the whole thing, and it goes on forever. So you can contemplate that, and a lot of you will disagree with this, and you'll push back on it, but you will find it to be true. If you want to go deeper into that and study Advaita Vedanta, there's a number of teachers out there. I like Rupert Spira a lot. I enjoy Paul Hederman because he's a bit of a rascal, and I've always liked rascals. There's a number of teachers. The most famous is Eckhart Tolle. I don't resonate with his personality very much, but he's teaching Advaita Vedanta. I don't know his work well enough to know if he calls it that, but that's where his ideas come from. I've listened to a number of his talks, and most of it is straight up Advaita Vedanta. Anyway, so how does this tie in with what's happening in the world today? So Cliff High, as I was saying, he recognized, he said, physicists keep finding smaller and smaller particles because they don't realize that their belief that there will be smaller particles, in fact, manifests that to become the reality, which is very profound when you think of it. Now, apply that to some other things that are happening in the world. And what I was thinking of this morning was Tartaria, this idea that there was a large civilization that flourished, and somehow in the 18th and 19th centuries it expired and it was covered up. Its existence and its demise was covered up. And so there are old maps that have Tartaria on them, and then you'll see documentaries that YouTube's full of them about the Tartarian energy systems that pulled energy out of the 0-point field, Tartarian architecture where the metal spires harvested energy, they used frequency. There's Tartarian trains that ran on water. It's very interesting. And then there's other documentaries that come forward, and they claim to prove that Tartaria did not exist. I myself am inclined to think that we've been lied to about a lot of our history, and I think something like Tartaria did exist. But the specifics might be very different from what we've been told. But I want to tie this in with this idea of manifestation and how we create reality, or how reality creates itself through us. There's evidence, for example, that when the San Francisco had its big earthquake at the turn of the last century, there were all kinds of underground structures that were exposed from an ancient civilization, really old buildings, really old bones and bodies, like desiccated bodies with like mummified, right? With clothing that didn't look like anything from a civilization that we know, except similar to what has been found in Siberia. And the clothing had metal threads woven into it and designs that we didn't have here. Anyway, you can look into that stuff. There's a lot of it out there. It's very interesting. Now, a lot of people say, well, I just don't believe that. That sounds, far-fetched. And I understand that. But what I'm saying is, if enough people look into Tartaria and start investigating Tartaria, the way reality works, they will create Tartaria. In other words, they'll create a Tartaria that existed once. I know this. I'm going to sound batshit crazy, but this is how reality actually works. There's another. I listened to a really good YouTube documentary about the orphan trains, and all these kids that showed up on these trains, and nobody knows where they came from, and they spoke different languages, and they wearing strange clothes, and they didn't have any documentation, and they didn't have any guardians with them. And there were hundreds of thousands of them that showed up and arrived in towns in the U.S. West. And it seems like they were survivors of some huge depopulation event. And another person you might want to look into is Jason Breshears, Breshears, and his program Archaix, Archaix. And his whole thing is this thing revolves around his discovery, reading books when he was in prison, from that he found in the Texas prison library system. A lot of books from hundreds of years ago that told a completely different history than the one we're given today. And he talks about the Phoenix phenomenon. What happens is every 138 years, an apparition appears in the sky, and it will devastate a portion of the earth. Sometimes it's a small regional event, and sometimes it's globe spanning. And the idea is that every 138 years, the world resets, and that the elites know about this, and they know the next one's coming, I think, in 2040. I think there was one in 1905. I don't know if I've got my math right there, but it's something like that. And the last one was fairly small and regional, but apparently the next one's going to be really big. And so the oligarchs are preparing for that, and they're organizing the world so that, as they always do, so that they'll come out on top. They can't completely control this, but they know it's coming, so they'll set themselves up to benefit from it as best as possible. That maybe they go underground. I don't know what they do. But it looks like right now we're living through a time where they are setting things up so that they will manifest the world that they want, in which they will be top dog. And a lot of us will not fare very well. So now, how does this tie in with the manifestation and the self-dreaming dream I was talking about, and Tartaria? Well, first of all, I think if enough people focus on Tartaria and the idea of a lost civilization that had all of this free energy and alternative health protocols using frequency and vibration that some of us are finding out about, it will come into being. It will literally manifest it. As strange as that sounds. Now let's change from Tartaria, which is in the past, and let's talk about the future. Many of us want a different world than the one we appear to be moving into, with digital ID and programmable money and social credit scores, and this sort of Orwellian dystopian future in which a small group of people will have almost total control over humanity. This is very obviously happening, and over the past 5 years, a certain health crisis occurred that's with a certain remedy, and that seems to be tied in with this as well. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I just want to stick with this idea that if that's true, and I think it's provably true, that what Aldous Huxley and George Orwell were warning us about, because they moved in those elite Fabian society circles, is coming to pass, then of course, we want to find out about it. We want to oppose it. But the worst thing we can do is put all our energy into fighting the world we don't want. We need to manifest the world that we do want. And that means we need to intensively envision the world that we believe we can bring into being. And we need to work on the kinds of free energy and alternative health things that we want to see. It's one of the reasons I'm involved with the Lightwave X39 patches and the Zinzino balance oil. And I work with Vanessa, my wife, we've built a healing studio in our house using brain tap and other technologies, and basically sound frequency and light frequency and Rife frequencies based on Dr. Rife's, R-I-F-E. We work with frequencies to heal the body and restore balance to the energy fields. We do that work because that is manifesting the world we want from a health perspective. And you might say, well, I can go out and prove to you that those things don't work. But what I'm saying is, by putting time and energy and effort into it and researching it and building the devices and building the frequency treatment table that we have and all of that, we're actually manifesting it into being. We're literally changing reality. Not just us, but collectively, a vast number of us are doing things like this. And so an alternative and new form of health and healing is going to arise. It's actually very ancient. There's a lot of evidence that the Egyptians and others were doing this stuff. Jason Christoff just came out with a very interesting report in which he revealed, based on other people's work, that every American president is directly descended from one British monarch. And it seems that there's an ancient lineage going back to the Egyptian pharaohs and ancient bloodlines that had been operating in the background of American politics, and that the United States itself may be part of this overarching plan to create a one world government. Very interesting report. I suggest you get on his email list and follow his work. That's another example of something that we might manifest. In other words, it might not be true right now, or it might not have been true 50 years ago, but it's becoming true because enough people are looking into it. So I just want to sort of put that idea in front of you about how reality works. It's not flick of a wrist. You can't just say, oh, I want to have, $1,000 bill in my wallet, and you open your wallet, there's $1,000 bill. It's not that kind of stage magic. It has to do with intensely visualizing something and believing it to be true, as though it is already so, and having a feeling around that it is the case. And then you have to sort of forget about it and let the universe deliver that to you, you see. And it may not, the universe's greatest trick was believing itself to be real. And it has set the game up so that it can never defeat those guardrails. So in fact, I was doing a very deep meditation on the weekend, and one of the teachings or downloads I got, and I've got this one before, but I got it especially powerfully. It brought a lot of clarity. What I kept hearing was the message, the one who awakens is himself the deception. And what that means is, as I've said many times, your final boss that you will have to face in your spiritual journey is the spiritualized ego. When you think that you have awakened, when you think you've woken up, that just reaffirms the idea that there's a separate self that could ever wake up. So you've just reinforced the illusion. So awakening means real awakening means letting go of the idea that there's anyone that could ever wake up. It's very paradoxical, actually. And in having that realization, there is a shift that occurs, like the scent of the memory of a perfume. The egoic self somehow shifts when it has that experience, but not really. That's really a story for another day. That's a whole other talk, and I'll do that one. But it ties in with what I'm saying. You're going to have to let go of your ideations around what you think reality is in order for us to collectively get out of this situation that we're in. The kind of manifestation that we have to do collectively requires a lot of us to work at a very advanced level and not be stuck at the level of that we're in with the left-right divide and the ideas about reality that are materially based. We will never get out of it if we remain stuck in that. Because, the controllers, they set up the whole education system, excuse me, in order to train us all into the material paradigm so that they can control us. You see, for us to get free of them and their control, we really have to get free. And that means doing that advanced Advaita Vedanta work. And you can also get there with other paths. In fact, all the spiritual paths lead to this, ultimately. Amazonian plant shamanism will get you there. Yeah, anything that's just not overtly dogmatic, stand up, sit down, say this, say that. Those are pseudo spiritual paths. But the genuine spiritual and shamanic paths will all bring you to this realization. And having that realization will set you free. And then you'll be able to envision and manifest a world in which we're not controlled by digital IDs and things like that. So anyway, this was a much longer report than I intended to file, but it was kind of an important one. I'm going to expand on these themes going forward. I've decided that I understand this enough that I can explain it, and people need to hear about this. And it's not about you becoming a follower of me. It's more that I want to point you into the direction of some excellent voices you can delve into and learn more about this for yourself. And I don't want you to believe anything I say. I want you to find it out for yourself, and you'll discover that it's self-evident. Another one you might want to follow is Neville Goddard. There's a lot of material about him. Watch out for the AI stuff. It's I'd rather hear, from his writings or his direct talks. But yeah, even if it's some AI-derived stuff, Neville Goddard is very good on this. Anyway, have a nice day, everybody, and we'll see you in the next report.